Hey cruise friends, I recently disembarked a cruise on the Ncl Joy. Today we're going to talk all about the entertainment that we saw on the ship and we're going to review it in detail. Let's go. Hey everyone, John here from Bite Size Cruises. Welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to talk all about the entertainment on board the Ncl Joy. I recently sailed on a 7-day voyage to Bermuda out of New York City on the Ncl Joy, and today we're going to talk all about the entertainment on board the ship. Let's start with the cruise director and the cruise director staff. The cruise director on board the ship was Vincent. I thought he was excellent. Cruise directors in 2024 are a little bit all over the place because of the proliferation of huge cruise ships. Sometimes you don't necessarily see your cruise director all the time. That's why sometimes I like the small ship feel. You really get to know the cruise director and the cruise director staff. They're kind of everywhere around the ship. On the larger ships, it's a little more difficult because there are too many things going on. However, on this particular cruise, I saw the cruise director a ton. I thought that he was very involved, more so than my recent cruises on NCL, where sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. And I get that they're busy. It's a very busy job. You're running all of the entertainment on board the ship. But with the recent cutbacks in the entertainment on board NCL, I feel like it is a big move to have the cruise directors back front and center to kind of be running the ship there. So I thought most of the things that the cruise director team did, they did very well. I think Norwegian does a really good job of like mini game shows in the atrium. I think they're really fun. They have like speed trivia, they have this or that shows. They do a lot of fun things where there is a little more audience involvement and there are a little more fun games going on, usually throughout the day and the evening in the atrium, which I appreciate. So big thumbs up for the cruise director and the cruise director staff. Next up, let's talk about comedy. There were 2 comedians on board the ship. I thought they were both okay. The first one was literally just okay. And again, when you're on a cruise ship, I'm a huge fan of comedy. So when you're on a cruise ship, I'm not expecting to see Dave Chappelle or Bill Burr, whoever your favorite. I get it, right? They're, you know, they're down a little bit from that, which is great. But I do expect to see comedians, like touring comedians that have a decent amount of material. And sometimes what you find is that they're very funny. The comedians are very funny, but they have like 15 minutes. So if you see them more than once, it falls apart, right? And I think that's kind of what happened here. The first comedian, he had like a solid 15, 20 minutes. He was very funny the first time I saw him. And then I went back and saw him in the theater and it was the same 50, even the crowd work was the same. He was doing the same jokes to the people in the crowd, which was a little weirder. The other comedian that was there was excellent. Yeah, I thought the comedians were good. The second comedian definitely was a little more polished. He had about an hour of material. You could tell I saw him several times. And there were a little bit of repeats. You know, there's a couple, like, he knows what's going to work. So he had a couple of, like, the big hits where he kind of pulled the crowd in, which I totally get, and that's awesome. So that was pretty good. Comedy, we'll give it a thumbs up. It was definitely good. Not as good as, like, you would see on Carnival. I think Carnival kind of sets the bar for comedy on cruise ships, but it was good. I enjoyed it, and it was something to do in the evenings, which is great. However, I will say that the venue for the comedy shows is very small, which is great because that's a good venue, especially for comedians that aren't huge, that really can't hold a huge room. However, it just gets too crowded in there. It's impossible to see a show. It would be better almost if that was like a comedy club and you had 4 or 5 comedians on and you could really just do comedy every night of the cruise and do my idea. No, again, please, no one cares what my ideas are. I get it. But I'm just going to say what my ideas are. My ideas would be to do like a 7, a 9, an 11 o'clock, or even like a lighter night show than that, like a rowdy show. And do a few shows every night where you can make reservations. You're only allowed to make 1 reservation a night. And if that room holds 300 people, that's 1,000 people that get to see comedy a night. And I think that would work really well if there was some variety of the comedians over the course of the cruise. So enough about me and enough about the comedy. It was pretty good. Next up, let's talk about the 2 shows that took place in the theater. The Joy Theater is very nice. There are 2 shows that take place there. I'm not going to talk about the other shows, like the comedians were in there one night, but let's talk about the 2 shows that actually run out of the theater. So the first one is The Magicians. The Magician was very good. His name was Jackson Rain. I generally hate magic shows on board cruises. I'm not a proponent of that. However, he was more of a mentalist. It was a very cool show. I was really intrigued on how he was pulling some things off. I get that they're illusions and tricks, but it was very well done, and he was very good, so big thumbs up for that. The main show on board the Joy is Elements. I do not think this is a main show for a cruise. I've said it a bunch of times. This is nothing against the people who are in that show. I think it's a very good show. It's, you know, like there's like aerialist things in there, the magician's in there, which is why there's always a magician on board when they're doing this show. And, you know, there's some singing and dancing and things like that. It's a little bit of a weird show. And I think if it was the secondary show on board the ship, it would be excellent. And I've said this a bunch of different times. NCL deciding to get rid of the main shows, like the Broadway productions, like on Joy in particular, they got rid of Footloose. Footloose was an excellent front show. Elements was an excellent second show. It gave you 4 nights in the theater of things where you could make reservations and do them, and they've taken that away. Now, I love the fact like MSC and Royal sometimes has production shows where it's just a production cast that does a show every night in the theater. I'm fine with that. I do understand that that comes at a cost, that they're paying 10 or 15 staff members, which they don't want to do, and they don't want to pay the exorbitant costs, I'm sure, for Broadway. However, it does leave you with less things to do on the ship, and therefore makes all of those other really small venues that are cool very, very crowded and tough to see a show in. As we've discussed ad nauseum on all of our NCL cruises recently. When I was on Joy last year and they had Footloose and Elements, it was amazing. So they have those 2 shows in the theater. There are also a few other things that take place in the theater. The comedy was in the theater one night. They had an 80s Broadway show in the theater one night. I thought it was good. We saw a show similar to that on our last cruise on Breakaway, I think it was. And that show was in the smaller theater, which I thought was perfect for it. It was in the Illusionarium or whatever that's called on Breakaway. I think it is the Illusionarium. And that show was very, very good. No, it's the Spiegel tent. No, again, no one cares. So that was really good. I enjoyed it. And the show, same on, it was different music for sure on Joy, and I thought they did a good job. Let's talk about the other few things that take place in the theater. So the Beatles Revolution takes place in the theater, but they also take place in the Cavern Club. If you go in the Cavern Club, it's almost impossible to see the show in there. There's like 40 seats I counted, and there's some standing room. It just gets too crowded. Same with Sid Norman's Poorhouse on the other ships. It's just too small and too crowded. It's great that it's an intimate venue. Again, if you had bigger shows going on around the ship, you could kind of reduce the traffic there and it would be much more palatable, and you wouldn't have to wait 2 hours to try to squish into that little tiny place. But it's just not, so it does get really crowded. The Beatles Revolution, again, very good. I've seen it on a few different ships now. They're always good. They do a great job. Go and see them in the theater. That's the tip for that. Comedy in the theater is a little bit different because those comedians have a really hard time sometimes with a room that big. It's difficult when you are normally touring in like a room that has 100 or 200 people to have a room that holds 1,000, and it might not be full. So, but the Beatles show in there is excellent, and the Beatles show in the Cavern Club is, of course, excellent as well. Let's talk about next the performers around the ship. I thought they were largely very good. They had some performers in the District Brew House. They had a pianist as well every night. They didn't have like a fun piano player in the District Brew House, which I like. Sometimes they have like almost like a Howl at the Moon vibe in the District Brew House. They did not have that, and they did not have entertainment up in the Observation Lounge, which is interesting. It was only up there one night, which on Joy last year I really loved. The performers in the Q Texas Smokehouse were excellent. There was a country band in there. They were really good. I saw them a few different nights. So yeah, the performers in the atrium were very good. So all around, I think the entertainment is good. There's just sometimes not enough entertainment. going on for you to find things to do in the evening. Now look, if you like to hang out in the bar at night, maybe in the whiskey bar, or just go someplace else, hang out, have some drinks, and go to the nightclub or whatever, you're fine. I'm looking for actively looking for entertainment in the evening. I love to go to different shows and to do different things, so that's just my opinion, and that's just what I enjoy. Last but not least, let's talk about the theme parties around the ship. So you have and then we'll talk about one other thing, but you have 70s night, 80s night, you have a glow party, you have Ocean Music Fest. These I thought were really good. Some of them take place in Spice H2O, which is in the back towards the top of the ship on deck 17. There were a ton of teenagers on board on my particular sailing, so those parties got flooded with teenagers, which is fine. It's just, it kind of, I think, intimidates a lot of the older people that usually go to those parties into not dancing or anything, because there's, you know, just teenagers running around and doing things on the dance floor. Like I saw a bunch of people getting up on people's shoulders and screaming and yelling and things like that. And then the cruise staff has to come over and ask them to get down. So it's just kind of like off-putting, I think, for people who would normally go to those things, especially 70s and 80s, where you're looking at a little bit of an older crowd and the kids just take it over, which is totally fine. They have every right to be there as much as anyone else. Just from a purely aesthetic perspective, you may not enjoy that. The Ocean Music Fest on the main deck kind of baffles my mind a little bit. I don't understand why they do that. It's like a music festival, but it's just the people that perform around the ship. So it would be really interesting if they brought somebody on board that, again, somebody with like maybe a little bit of notoriety. It doesn't even have to be obviously you're not going to bring a huge artist on board the ship, but it's like the last night or two that they do it. And it would be really cool if it was something like, or if like they did the Beatles thing up there, or they did something different where they were like, hey, we're doing a music festival and we're going to have this, you know, Kelly Clarkson impersonator. It doesn't even matter, right? Something like that, or the Legend show that they used to do with like they have the people dressed up as those artists and they're singing. Something like that. Again, no one cares about what I think is good. They obviously know what they're doing. Tons of people are cruising and having a great time. Just my opinions. And then last but not least, let's talk about Wheel of Fortune and Deal or No Deal and those things. Deal or No Deal takes place in the atrium. I think it's fun. I enjoy it. My biggest issue with Deal or No Deal is that they do it every single day, and it is purely a cash grab to get you to buy the cards and to get you to play along and do the things that they do. I get it. It's to build profit. It's the new bingo, and they still do bingo, but it's just a nickel and diming cash grab that I don't love. That's it, plain and simple. The game is fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun. I'm sure if you're participating, you have a chance to win $1,000, whatever. But most people don't. So next up, Wheel of Fortune, same thing. Again, I talk about it all the time. I saw Price is Right on board Prima. I thought it was amazing and a ton of fun. My biggest issue with Wheel of Fortune, it's just a cash grab. It's a cash grab to get you to participate. It's like bingo. You play, same thing with Deal or No Deal. You just get numbers. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just bingo for the most part. So, and then you can try to guess the puzzles and you win like little tiny things if you guess the puzzles. The first night there was a decent amount of people in the theater for Wheel of Fortune, but not a lot. We're talking like that. If that theater holds 1,000, it was maybe not quite half full. And the second night there was maybe 200 people. So it's not a resounding hit. I'm just not sure why they do it. I would much rather see something that's very crowd interactive that they're not charging, like Family Feud on Carnival, right? As many issues as I had with Carnival. I think that they do that really well. It's really funny. So something like that where you would have this great game show where there's a lot of participation, a lot of fun, and it just comes off as nickel and diming to me at the end of the day. But it works. Again, people do it. They're spending $100 in there on those cards trying to win something. So far be it for me to second guess any of this. Otherwise, that's the entertainment on board the Ncl Joy. We had a great time on this cruise. I do wish there was just like a headline. If there was a headline show, I think all of the other entertainment gets like a bump up because then everything's not as crowded and you have more things going on in the theater. But all in all, really good time. Had a real lot of fun on board the Ncl Joy. Was a better cruise this year than it was last year. I like some of the updates they did. I love the thermal suite and those things. So great video. Great time. Really enjoyed it. So Thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. We would love for you to subscribe and like this video if you found it helpful. Come along and join us on this fun cruise journey. Thanks so much. Happy cruising. See you tomorrow. Bye.